Hey everybody, Davey here from Davey's World Fishing. Today I'm going to talk to you about the importance of a two-piece rod for your kayak fishing applications. Alright guys, now as an avid kayak fisherman myself, I realize the importance of deck space. In a day and age where your kayak is outfitted with electronics, you got a bait tank in the back, you got a kill bag up front, you probably have your kayak wheels somewhere. Deck space is pretty limited, and having just your rod sticking up in the back a lot of times is not the most convenient, especially if you're launching in the surf and coming back through the surf where you do have a chance to flip that kayak over and break all your rods. I know there's a lot of stigmatism between two-piece rods versus one-piece rods. A lot of people feel that two-piece rods are not as sensitive. They don't feel like a one-piece rod. In a lot of cases that's true, but with some of the new rods that Okuma introduced, that two-piece has a real one-piece feel to them. Personally, I fish a lot of one-piece rods when I'm fishing the harbors and the bays, but if I do have a surf launch or somewhere where I do need to store my rods, I'll certainly go to a two-piece rod with no hesitation. This year for 2023, Okuma just reintroduced the Reflections rods. The Reflections rods is about a 15-rod lineup with about 7 of those being two-piece rods. They've got two-piece in the casting models, so you can put your bait cast reel on there, and then they've got 5 models that are spinning. This happens to be the spinning rod in front of me. And they do break down nicely. So what nice thing about Okuma rods is if it's a two-piece rod, for the most part, unless it's a 70-30 split, their rods are all 50-50 split. So if it's a 7-foot rod, it's going to break down to 3.5 feet roughly. So they do match. You're not going to have an extra long tip with an extra short butt section. As you can see, they're exactly the same length there. Now the nice part about that two-piece rod is with only being 3.5 feet is you can actually stick it right down, depending on your kayak, you can put it right down in the gunnel right next to you, or you can open a hatch and you can stash it. A lot of the kayaks that now have the pedal drive, you have a pedal drive or an impulse drive or whatever kind of drive your kayak happens to have, you don't have that direct kayak space that we used to have in a lot of the pedal kayaks. Like I've been kayak fishing for a really long time, since probably a lot of you weren't even born yet. But we'd be able to crawl up to the front, open that front hatch, and I can jam my 7- and 8-foot rods all the way down the length of my kayak on the inside, do my surf launch, and have no issues whatsoever. Nowadays, with that drive, as I was mentioning, you don't have that space, or you got to get them down the side. It makes it a little bit more inconvenient. So with that, a two-piece rod a lot of times becomes a good option for you. You're generally not going to find the two-piece rods in the heavy stuff, so if you are surf launching and you're going for yellowtail out of Southern California or tuna, it's going to be harder to find those two-piece rods. You're just going to have to stick them in the back or out of the rod holders. But if you're fishing the harbors and the bays where you're going to use some of that lighter bass gear, there's a lot of two-piece options out there. So as I mentioned, Okuma just reintroduced the Reflections rods. This is actually the B series, so this is the 3rd generation of these rods. Really nice rods, very sensitive. They're actually a 24-ton graphite, split grip cork section. It's got a screw-up reel seat, so you can really lock that dude into place. As I mentioned, 24-ton graphite. They use C-guide, deep-pressed stainless steel guides, as well as zirconium insert. So perfect for your braided lines. You can use your monofilament or fluorocarbon or whatever you want. You're not going to get any digging or cutting into those guides. As I mentioned, they're a two-piece rod. You've got a nice long ferrule connection. It's not the European spigot ferrule, but you do have a nice long connection, so it does give it that really nice one-piece feel to it. I'll make another video where I run through all of the rods, but just want to give you a quick look at those two-piece rods. As I mentioned, it's got a really nice one-piece feel. They offer the UFR tip section, so Okuma uses that UFR section, so that top, I'd say 1/3 of that rod has unidirectional fibers that really help in the load of that rod. So if you are bay bass fishing or calico or sand bass, anything in the harbors, you can really load up on those fish and pull them from the pilings and not worry about your tip snapping. Of course, if you're high sticking, you're in the kayak and you're really leaning back on it and your rod's bent over, there's a good chance you're going to snap it. Doesn't matter what rod you're fishing, there's always that opportunity to do that. But the cool piece about these, as I mentioned, there's 2 casting versions. So if you are a bait cast guy and you want to get that cast out there, I think the 2 are 7'2", 7'2", two-piece rods. There's 2 casting, and then the spinning come in at 5'6" up to I think that's 7'2" as well. Great little series. Check them out at OkumaFishingUSA.com. But nice little rods, something for the kayak, something to think about. I appreciate y'all checking in. Do me a favor, hit that like button down below and subscribe to Davey's World Fishing in the right-hand corner. See you on the water.